3, 2, 1, so I can. We're live? Oh, hey! Hi, guys, how are you? See, this is, I think already what we're seeing in a really cool way is this new format at its finest.
It's not showing.
We are really, really excited that you are engaged with us. And what do you got going on there, Carrie?
I got nothing.
You got nothing?
That's why I'm
Jake, are we
wondering.
good?
There it is. It says live. Where's our picture?
Well, hey, I hope that you are there, and according to Jake, you're there. This is the beauty of what we're trying to do, right? What we are trying to do is to give you some insight and clues into what our meetings look like on a regular basis. And so it's not just me this year. I've invited our advisory team and Carrie to be a part of the State of the Church because I think it's going to be really valuable for you to see how we work together, how we have conversations. What you're going to see over the next half hour or so is a sample of what our staff meetings look like on Tuesdays, what our advisory team meetings look like on a monthly basis, and the way in which we interact with one another. So if you are logged on today live, I just want to say thank you for spending the evening with us. Carrie is logging on live as well, and she's got the comment feed up, and so she's going to be posting a PDF of all the downloads. And I think you're going to send a URL and maybe even a downloadable version of that. So a lot of the things that we're going to talk about when it comes to budgets and numbers and all those things are in slide, graph form. You can download those and keep an eye on those while we're going through this together. Also want you to know that she's going to be monitoring that live feed. So if you've got questions live, she's going to be watching that and throughout the evening periodically throw some of those to us as well. So we got to be ready for that, guys, for some of those live questions coming into play. I just want to remind us why we do what we do and who we are as a church. I think one of the most important things for us as a church is to remember that we exist because we want to lead people to Jesus.
Amen.
And part of that is bringing them into the truth of God's word and then discipling them along the way. And our core values we believe in deeply. We've got 7 of them. I'm not going to read through those. You can download those. But the first 2 I think are really important that we talk about all the time. Jesus is the center of everything that we do. And discipleship is the goal. That we want to be a church that makes disciples who make disciples. And so what you need to know is that among this team, every decision that we make, whether it's finances or staffing or programming or ministries, even sermon series stuff, everything gets filtered through those core values. And if it doesn't land in those core values, we don't do them. And that's just part of who we are as a church. And so as we navigate these things together, know that everything is filtered through that. Well, would you help me welcome to the table people that I get to do life with together on a huge regular basis. Tom O'Donnell, Darren Smith, Rich Chu, Carrie Smith, and Matt Ice. They make up the advisory team and the executive team of staff, and we get to work together on a regular basis. I am blessed as a lead pastor to have a team like this to really support and hold me accountable and to challenge and inspire, and we get to do that a lot together. Guys, I think the best way for us to start is just to remind ourselves that it has been quite a year.
Yeah.
Right? What a year. Lots of good, some bad, and some hard. And that's just part of life, and we're used to that. But some of the amazing things that God's been doing in this place, I think, are evident from life change to numbers to all those things. And I think the most obvious is the attendance. And if you remember correctly, just a year ago or so, we moved this room around because we were already blowing out the walls of this place. And we've already started to see numbers grow. Darren, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, tell us how many numbers we gained through this remodel.
And so we originally, in our original format, could squeeze in 140.
Okay.
Now fire code's 175.
175, yeah.
I think we really 125 is about all we could fit in the room before.
Okay.
And so we've increased by 45 or 50 capacity.
Yeah. So I'm a big stats guy. I love numbers and stuff like that and doing some analysis. So this is interesting, and appreciate Tommy helping to put some charts and graphs together. You'll see those in the materials that you're able to download. So our, year-over-year monthly average attendance numbers for 2021, 156, 2022, 201, 2023, 242, 2024, 275. And so over those 4 years, that's a 76% increase we've seen. Wow, I mean,
That's
give
great.
God the glory, right, for that.
Wow.
So what's interesting, that's a year over year, that's about a 21% growth rate.
Wow.
So you ready for this? Buckle up. If we continue on this rate, 2025, we'd be looking at around an average monthly attendance of 333. 2026 would be around 402, and 2027, 487. Right? So it's just.
I mean, when you emailed those numbers today, I emailed back. I think I just threw up a little bit. Like that made my heart. I mean, in a great way if it can be. It's crazy.
So I mean, I think we'll talk a little bit more and unpack what that means going forward.
Yeah.
But those are just a few numbers that I wanted to share with you guys and to those tuning in online.
Yeah.
I think what's amazing about that is folks who come to 9 o'clock are going to be shocked at those numbers.
Yeah.
Folks who come to 10:45 that don't know what's coming in might be shocked at that as well. But we have a third community of people that nobody sees, and that's
right.
a vibrant online community.
Yeah.
On any given Sunday, we see 45, 50, up to 75 people online.
Yeah.
And at first I thought those numbers were like way out of whack,
Right.
and then we began to do a deep dive. We found out we've got like pockets of people, not just around our city and our state, but across the country that are logging in, watching. We got a group down in South Carolina that watch it or listen to it together and then have a small group discussion about it. We've got family members of people who call this church home that live in other parts of the city or the state that log in on a regular basis. Some of those people are tithing, right? Like it's crazy to me to think about. So while you may be a part of 9 o'clock on a regular basis or 10:45 on a regular basis, or maybe you're somebody that's only watching us digitally online, I want you to know you're a part of something that's way bigger than we ever even could have imagined.
And we don't even have time to go into all those stories, but there's some really wild stories about how some people have come to learn about good news and have started attending our online streaming service that are wild.
Yeah.
So,
So fun.
can't go into those. We don't have time today, but seek out Aaron or Carrie if you want to hear some of those.
Yeah.
I think those numbers are cool. You and I talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
It's not about butts and seats. It's not about Sunday numbers to us. What really matters is whether or not we're making disciples who make disciples.
Yeah.
And to us, the biggest measure of success is in that discipleship arena. Carrie, you're doing a great job leading that. How about you share a little bit of what God's been doing from a discipleship standpoint?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that 2 years ago in January, we literally just started our D groups, our discipleship groups. So that's really exciting to think that 2 years ago, and there are actually 5 groups that celebrated 2 years in January. And 9 more will celebrate in April 2 years. But so I love that. But let me give you kind of the complete stats of that. We have 18 D groups right now. 11 of them are women and 7 are men.
Come
so
on,
we
man.
need some more guys groups.
Let's go, guys.
Let's go, guys.
That have a total of 65 people, and that's 39% of our adults.
Wow.
39% of our adults are in a discipleship group. And then with our small group numbers, we have 5 total groups right now that meet on 4 different nights of the week, and that's 40% of our church, including kids. So the numbers are like 67 adults to like 42 kids or something like that. They're pretty close, but everybody, including kids, 40% of our church is a part of a small group. And then when you think about our family ministries and our kids, we are still rocking 30% for kids. So we have so many children that are coming to Good News Kids and being discipled here on Sundays through that program. So lots of really great numbers. And I think it's really neat to think about all these groups that are going to be celebrating, especially D groups, celebrating 2 years. And then even within the last 3 weeks, I've added like 5 people to D groups and 7 to small groups. So it's just just keeps coming in. It's so cool.
Yeah, that's the cool part is you have some people that are very early in their journey with Christ. You have some people that have been doing it for a very long time. And that mixture, it's a really awesome thing to see. And if you come to our Hilliard one, we can never get done, our small group, we can never get done on time. Someone has to cut us off because the conversation is so enrichful for us. So.
Yeah, I agree. And I know, Darren, do you want to tell your story about how you got involved in D groups real quick? What did you tell me, young man?
I told you I didn't need to read my Bible every day.
You sure did.
Yeah, I regret those words, and I've just, come to find out that you were right, I was wrong.
Oh, that's
Thank you.
documented.
You're smart, I'm not. You're the best, I'm the worst. You're attractive, I'm not very good looking.
This is recorded.
No, but it's been really transformative for me, and
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people can attest to that. But it's something personally, I look forward to, and I crave being in the Word now
Yeah.
every morning, have my cup of coffee, and really, doing the daily reading, and really digging into the insights, praying, asking the Holy Spirit to guide me and to share new insights and things like that in my daily life. It's been great,
Yeah.
and love it. So.
Yeah.
Hearing stories of life change happening
Oh, yeah.
for many of you that are in discipleship groups and small groups has
Yeah.
been awesome. The national average is about
Yeah.
44%.
Yes.
So about unhealthy churches, 44% of the adults in worship are also involved in discipleship. And I know you said 39% of us in D groups and 40% in small groups. Sounds like we're below. But the truth is we're unique in the fact that we have two different discipleship tracks. So we have people who are in small groups that aren't in D groups,
Right.
and people who are in D groups and not in small groups. If you take the number of individuals in our church that are involved in one or both of those, our numbers are over 55%. So more than, great job, right?
Winning! No, it's not a competition.
Over 55% of our church is deeply involved in discipleship
amazing.
and community.
So proud of us.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's really what matters most to us as a church. If you're watching or listening to this and you're not plugged into one of those, we love you. And we just want you to know you're missing out on what I think is the heartbeat of the church. And that's deep level community, deep dive into discipleship. And this is not to condemn you, it's to invite you.
Yes.
Come join and be a part of what God's doing. It will be transformative
Yeah.
for you in a really cool way. Now, I know talking about this stuff, I geek out about, right? Carrie and I geek out about those numbers.
Yeah.
Some of you and some around this table geek out about other numbers. And some of you are going, can we just talk about money? Can we talk about how do we do with budget? How do we do with finances?
Yeah.
And so we've got some folks around this table that are much more gifted at that than I am. I can tell you this much, and Rich, you can kind of back me up with this. We did hit budget last year.
Yes, we
Which
did.
is accurate, right? Can you unpack that a little bit?
Sure. So for 2024, we actually ended up the year right on plan on the giving side.
Nice.
And the other good thing was we were slightly under on our expense side. So we hit both items very well. Just in general, kind of month to month, just for some additional numbers, 5 months we were in the black, 7 months we were in the red. But the months that we were in the black, we were way over. And in the 7 months that we were in the red, we were slightly under. And then just in general on the households, we have approximately about 103, 106 or so family households that are part of Good News. And what we did find is there are about 64 that regularly give every Sunday. And of those, what we did find throughout the year, we did lose some families over the year. That I think was some of the things you said about some of the highs and lows. But there were 12 new giving families throughout the year. And then of the families that were already giving, we had 31 of them that increased their giving, 23 over 24. So those were some very, very good numbers relative to everybody investing in the church.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's only possible because of you guys.
Thank you.
Those of you that have been giving so faithfully and consistently, we're grateful for that. Some of you are going, man, I just wasn't as consistent as I wanted to be. Maybe online giving would be a better option. It's helped Aaron and I be more consistent. We don't even have to think about it
Right.
anymore.
Yep.
And so even if we were to miss a week or whatever, our giving still goes. So maybe that's something you think about. And we can look at this like glass half full, glass half empty.
Yeah.
Some of you are probably listening to this going, okay, we have 103 households. Only 64 have been giving. Yeah, I mean, if you do the math, about 40 of our families have yet to begun to give. And yet, we know as leaders, finances are a lag indicator. Generally speaking, when people start investing into a church, the last thing that they begin to invest is their money. And that's normal. And we're used to that. We're kind of seeing that. So while we've seen the 21% year-over-year growth in attendance, our finances haven't quite matched that yet. But it's been cool. 12 new giving families this year. 31 families stepped up the level of giving. And I look at this as a really good positive because we met budget with 64 families. Imagine what we can do as God begins to call some of those other families to join in and literally put their money where their mouth is and say, we're going to invest our finances. I want you to know the teams that do this take it very seriously. So we've got a separate finance team and this advisory team because we want to be good stewards of what you give, so you can know that a huge chunk of what is happening around here is it's definitely being stewarded well, because lots of eyes are on it on a regular basis. In fact, Tommy, I think we have a cool stat about how much we gave in our 1-for-1s. It's like 14,000, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Which is awesome. So that is correlating with the number of people who are present, online or here, and $1 for each of those engagements. So last year alone, we gave more than $14,000 to one of our 4 partnering organizations because of your faithfulness in a lot of different ways. Wow. And so I just want to say a huge thank you to that. Whether we like to admit it or not, and I don't like talking about money, but whether we like to admit it or not, finances are an important part of the kingdom ministry, because that's how we make things happen. And every time we faithfully give, and the reason Paul talks about joyfully giving is we're not just giving for stuff, we're giving for the work of the kingdom to reach people. And that's huge. Matt, you and I have talked about this a lot, right? Yep. What we love more than anything in this church is hearing life change stories. And one of the things you've shared with me a little bit is how much that's impacted you this year.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of things that have impacted me are like seeing the baby dedications. And obviously we're going to have another one coming up soon because of all the new babies in the church. But
there were 4 this past year. So thank you for growing our church organically.
Yes. So we had 11 babies dedicated in 2024. And to me, that's just exciting because not only is that the parents saying they're going to commit their child to the Lord, but it's us as a congregation supporting them and loving them as a family. Yeah. And it's just exciting to me. One of the other stats that I find pretty cool were the 12 baptisms we had in 2024. Just want to share a story about one of them. Actually, it ends up being 2 of them. Yeah. It's when Jack was sharing his testimony and being baptized, and just his story was just so powerful to me. Yeah. And I noticed so many others. Just like a lot of the baptism stories, they're anybody's testimony is powerful. Yes. But that day in particular is we're wrapping up service, and you're basically asking, come talk to us if you want to be baptized, and then here comes Gibby up. I want to be baptized, and just seeing the excitement on Brian and Lindsay's face to see their son commit, shoes and all, just getting in there, and just it was just so uplifting for me in my faith walk to see them just proclaim their love for Jesus.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about it. It's contagious.
Yeah, right? It's definitely contagious, right? And if you're looking to be baptized, obviously you're doing that for you and your walk, but also other people see that, right? Yeah. And it's amazing how many other people have seen folks get baptized and then decide, in the next week or 2. We're setting up the tub every, it feels like on a whim. So, not only having that, but you're also giving others courage to do the same thing.
Yeah, sure.
I'm reminded, been reading, we're going to talk about it this weekend on Sunday, but the early church and the number of people who are getting saved every day and being baptized. And we celebrate, and rightfully so, the 12 people that we baptized this year. But what would it be like if we were having to baptize the way the first church was, right? 3,000 in a day, 5,000 a day. I'd love to get to a point where that tub has to be perpetually full and ready. And listen, that is something we strive for because there are stories of life change happening. Many of you that are watching have stories of life change. We just don't even know it yet. Some of you might even be contemplating getting baptized. I just want to say, don't hesitate. It's just an amazing opportunity for us to share what God's doing and to proclaim our faith in a really cool way. And so if that's something you're thinking about doing, let me know. We're going to fill that tub up and we'll make that happen. And Gibby, if you're watching, I will never forget, ever in the history of my ministry, I'll never forget you coming up to be baptized, shoes and all. That's one of my favorite moments.
Carrie, I just thought of something too about the baby dedications. This weekend is Valentine's Day.
Oh, okay.
So, come November, December, we might have
several more births. Let's do it.
Maybe.
Job security.
Just saying. I don't know.
I love it. Listen, the stories of life change are so significant. One of the things we want to do in 2025 is capture those and tell those stories more frequently. And some of you are back there going, God's changed me. I just don't know how to tell my story. We got a class for that.
We sure do.
Discover Your Story, where we help you navigate learning how to tell your story. And if that's you, we want to help you with that as well. I think that's just a huge part of it. One of the things that I've seen life change happening is when we serve together.
Yeah.
And there's a thing in the church culture called the 90-10 rule, where 90% of the work of the church gets done by 10% of the people. We don't have that problem at this church, which I'm so grateful for. We have so many, what is it, 120, what is it?
Yeah, so the church, within the church, we have 127 individuals
127.
that are serving in a dozen different ways.
Yes.
So we talk about 90-10, that's 50%, almost 50% of the church is serving in some way. And that's in all different ways, right? And so we're so appreciative of that. Of those 127 volunteers, 33 are actually leading in some way, whether that's a ministry or in some other capacity. And so, and if you think about that, it's not just, hey, I'm leading a meeting, right? There's planning, there's follow-ups, there's talking with us about it. So it's a big time investment for folks that have families and jobs. So we're so thankful for those leaders. And as I think about volunteering, a lot of folks say, well, how much do I volunteer? Or I don't have a lot of time to volunteer. And a couple of examples, I think maybe on the smaller end, is we've had several folks as we kind of run the coffee ministry that have had, they were sick or they had family issues like the night before. And folks that have stepped up to come in the next morning at like 7:30 in the morning and make coffee. And yeah, it's only a couple of hours and it's just coffee. But I'm so thankful for those people that are willing to do that. And, this time of year, it's nice to have coffee and a nice welcome in the church. And then you think maybe on a little bit more of a heavy investment, you think about Jake, who does our tech team. I mean, we never know what's going to happen in that tech booth. And he's here pretty much every Sunday early, helping us get it ready so that you can
back there right now.
Yeah, so you can have the online experience and talk about someone that's stepped up. So whether you volunteer in a small way or a big way, we're appreciative, and we'll take whatever help that you can provide.
And I think, like if you're serving today and your spouse is not serving, get them to serve with you. Talk them into serving too. Carrie and I often talk about we're at our best when we're serving together. And so if I just want to give that encouragement today that, encourage your spouse if they're not serving alongside you or in a different ministry, encourage them to also sign up and find a spot that they can, or in an area that they can serve.
Yep, the best arguments that Kelly and I have is I find out she's doing first service and I'm doing second service. And that's okay. That's a good argument to have. So.
We would also encourage you to volunteer because it's a great way to meet new people.
Yes.
It's a great way to be engaged in the church. It's a great way to just spend a lot of time with fellow Christians and working together. So it's just a lot of fun. I know, speaking personally, we have a lot of fun with our group. We do meet every month. Aaron makes us come here every month. But it is a good time, and it builds a lot of camaraderie. So I encourage you to do that as well.
I think we hear a lot of times from folks who are saying, I just don't feel plugged in, or I just don't know that many people, or whatever. We've got some really good options for you. Get in a D group, get in a small group, serve together, volunteer. That's, no matter how big our church gets, that's part of the way that we make sure we stay small in relational with one another. We're going to continue to be intentional about that.
That's right.
Guys, we have so much to celebrate. God's been doing incredible things this year, but I don't think God's done. God's got big things in store for us. In fact, this year, this September, is our 10-year church anniversary. 10 years. And you guys have been here since like day one, right? Like OGs. We're going to do some celebrating.
Huge party.
Huge party.
Cake.
Cake. Oh, yeah. Yes! Balloons. I might even learn how to do a cartwheel.
Whoa.
That is also recorded, folks.
Actually, I'm not doing that. I totally take it back.
Wow.
So we believe God's got big things in store, and while we are celebrating all that God's done and is doing, and rightfully so, I think it's important for us to anticipate what He's going to do and be prayerfully excited about what God wants to do, because we know that God wants to do bigger things this year and in the future. And part of what this team's been talking about on a regular basis is that. And I just want to make sure you all know that we're not just resting on the laurels of 2024. We've already been praying about 2025 and beyond and what that's going to look. We're going to dream big. We're going to swing for the fences. but we're going to do it accountably and be good stewards of that. I think that what I love about this team is they're really good at working together. Sometimes I get us way too out in front. They're like, woo, slow down a little bit. Sometimes they get a little too excited and I have to kind of wheel it back. But I want you to know that's how the team works, to make sure that while we are working hard to swing for the fences, we're going to be accountable and do so in a good stewardly way. Part of that is going to be thinking about our finances for the year. And we are going to increase the budget, but we're doing it a little bit tempered, intentionally. Rich, how about you share a little bit about what we're going to do with that?
So what we plan to do for this year is we actually took the last quarter of 24 and put that in for 25. So we have, so we're kind of easing into 25's budget. Two of the big items that we are planning for, one is on rent. Our rent did go up, but the good thing is Aaron negotiated still below market rate for the next 2 years. But as part of the trade-off for below market rate, if we renew in the third year, our landlord is really going to stick it to us.
Yeah, I'm sure that's
So
coming.
part of the plan is we got to really look at, our budget with respect to rent. And then one of the other things that we did for staffing as well is we put some additional budget for staffing. We haven't hired yet. There are a lot of plans on staffing, but what we wanted to do was make sure that we had a budget in there, because we don't look at staffing as an expense. It truly is an investment in people, and people are really what make this church work. So we did put that in there for 25. So those are the two big items for 25, is rent because we had to, and then staffing because we want to make an investment in this church.
And that brings a really great question from someone online. They're wanting to know, with staffing, with Matt leaving and his salary that was paid, what are we doing with that money?
Yeah.
So you've mentioned it, but we'll go into a little more detail. And then they also asked, they're an OG, and they're wondering what's up with worship, because they remember when we had a worship leader, and now they know without it. They're not complaining, they're just wanting to know where are we on that?
Oh, those are great questions. Listen, nobody wants us to hire someone who will pay full attention to the worship any more than I do. And we have been without a worship leader pretty much as long as I've been here, and it's kind of been part of my job responsibility even before stepping into lead role, is making sure we have worship leaders and musicians and scheduled and set lists and all. I'm ready to offload that. We are incredibly blessed to have the people who are stepping up on a monthly basis and serving in the way that they are, and amazing musicians who give so selflessly and sacrificially, and also some guests that come in to help lead us. We are intentionally having conversations on a regular basis with a handful of people to whom we might consider hiring for that role. We're trying to decide, is that a full-time position? If so, do they have other skill sets so that they can do other jobs within the church? Is it a part-time position, but that they'll put their full attention to it? We're having those conversations on a regular basis. I really hope that happens sooner rather than later to make that happen. The question about Matt's salary is a great one. When Matt left, really 3/4 of the way through last year's budget, we saved some of that. That's part of how we ended up in our budget, on budget last year. We really began to have conversations as a team about what we currently have here. How can we take some of that money and be a blessing to some of our current staff? In particular, Carrie and I began to have some hard conversations about, hey, are you really doing what you're called to do? Are you living into what God's really asking of you? And after you prayed through that, and I was praying through that, nudging you a little bit that way, one of the things that this team agreed on is that it's time for Carrie to step into a different type of leadership role within the church. If you pulled up the org chart, you'll notice that there's an executive team. That's key staff leaders. And then there's an advisory team. These 4 men right now are in that. And then there's other staff that are part of the workings of the church. And then there's the ministry teams, the volunteers, and the leaders of each of those there. One of the things that we began to say is, Carrie, you've been working at this high level for years. It's time that you have the title and the money for that. So you're going to hear something that for the first time, we're going to announce it, that effective January 1, Carrie has stepped into a new title with a pay raise accordingly. She is now the pastor of Discipleship and Family Ministries, and we are super excited about that. Those of you that are in our kids ministry, she's been Pastor Carrie to you. She's been shepherding and caring for you and leading you. It's time that we just call her that. And I'm going to be, because of that, leaning on her heavily with some other things in the church. I think that's huge. Now, that also leads, what's next?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we need a worship leader. We probably need to backfill some of your positions.
Yes,
And I think honestly, we all know around this table, the next big hire is an executive pastor. Just the enormity of where God is taking us as a church. I don't have the capacity to do all of that a little bit.
Yeah, I think if you look at Aaron's role, and as we continue to grow as a church, right, there's kind of that vision casting piece, which is the head of the church, or the head pastor of the church. But then there's also like dotting the I's and crossing the T's and the administrative piece of it, and that's just too much for one person to do.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a need to expand and have an executive pastor on staff. Now we'll talk about over time what that looks like, but we want to make sure we do the right hire and someone that can come in here and be effective and also be good stewards of all the work that we've already been doing. So we're looking forward to that, but that's definitely on our roadmap as we go forward.
And I don't know that we know the timing of how that's all going to play out. I mean, if God provides the right worship leader, I think we're ready to pull the trigger on that. We all know that we need that. But we're also not going to handcuff long-term for the sake of short-term. We're going to be thinking about that and continuing to pray about that, whatever that looks like. And I think it's huge for what we're about to talk about, right?
Yes.
As God begins to lead us into the future of this church and the growth that we're seeing, right now you have 2 full-time employees and a couple part-time, and incredible part-time, Lindsay Stamm and Noah and Faith doing an incredible job with our youth ministry. By the way, if your kids are teenagers and not involved with youth ministry, you're missing it.
You're
I think
missing out.
Super Bowl party, they had 18.
They had 18 kids
18
at the Super
people.
Bowl party. I walk in the door and 2 of the teens were like, "I can't leave yet, Miss Carrie. I'm in a Twister tournament." All right, I'll
It's
stay.
awesome. It's awesome. So, I mean, we've got incredible staffing, but for what we believe God's calling us to do next, we're going to need to hire help when it comes to that. So be praying for us as we try to vet that and sort through that and see God's will on that. I know I'm excited about what that looks like. It's becoming more and more obvious to me and to all of us, just looking at this room every given Sunday, this is not our long-term place. In fact, it's getting less likely that it's our short-term, long-term place. Right? We've signed a 2-year lease with a 3rd-year option, but man, I'm not sure how much longer we're going to be
The
able.
3rd-year option, I don't think is really an option.
I don't think I like that. That's really good. So we've begun conversations about what's next.
Yeah.
Where, what kind of space. What we've been learning from experts that we've been reaching out to is that based on our growth rate and where we currently are, our next building needs to be 15 to 20,000 square feet. This is 5,000 square feet, including classrooms and bathrooms, if you put that in perspective. And our next building needs to be about 15 to 20,000 square feet. To get there, you got a couple options. You can build, which means you'd have to find land and then build. Current rates right now for building a 20,000 square foot building is about $480 a square foot, give or take, which means that's an $8.5 million building project. Yikes. To buy a building that size, and then eventually we'd have to renovate it, but to buy that building would be about $93 a square foot, give or take, which would put us more like a $2 million project. And so we began to ask, and are continuing to ask the questions, is it time to think about that? We currently spend this year $8,100, next year $8,600 on just this lease, plus $975 for the rec outlet space. So we're already over $9,000 a month. Eventually we'll be closer to $10,000 a month for our lease. So I began to talk to these guys. I'm like, what does owning a building look like? And Rich, can you share a little bit about what we've been talking about?
Yeah, so if you just go by some of the metrics you just said, and you look at a $2 million building, and just say you had to put down, 20%, just like you're buying a house, plus or minus, that's $400 that we need to come up front. But when you look at the numbers on a mortgage at current rates, that's plus or minus about what we're gonna pay in rent. So the thinking was, do we continue to just throw money away on rent, or do we really invest in the future of this church and get a permanent home for us?
Yeah.
So those are some of the kind of baseline numbers. We spent a lot of time talking about it. You know, Darren did kind of a plot map of where everybody is, because we wanted to get an idea of geographically.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want to go so far that it you know, people don't want to drive.
Yeah.
But part of it also is when you look at the market in general, Powell is very, very expensive.
Sure.
Yeah.
And there's not really many options. So we're trying to figure all of that out, and then, you know, Darren spent some time looking at.
Yeah, I mean, you talked a little bit about the fact that, like, okay, how much can we afford? And, you know, so then it's like, okay, well, where should we, if, you know, look at to potentially build or move into? And so, you know, Dana Chu was very gracious and to help compile some of our numbers and look at, you know, where are our people? I think intuitively we know, right? We all have relationships with people here to know that, okay, I think there's a lot of people in Marysville, or it seems like there's a lot of people in Delaware. And so to really kind of plot that out and to really kind of reinforce and reaffirm that, yeah, okay, we've got a lot of people in Marysville, we've got a lot of people in Delaware, of course, Powell, we have a huge bubble, you know, here. And so just to kind of reaffirm that we know where our people at, where they're coming from, that we need to be in sort of a, you know, within a reasonable radius of where our folks are. So I don't know if Pickerington, unfortunately, is going to be where we look to.
Maybe we'll launch a campus there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be the first campus launch.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting that you say that. What we did find is that 25 families, households, travel more than 25 miles to get here.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Like, that's crazy, including 2 of our advisory team members, right, that are traveling 28, 30, 35 miles one way to get here. So we're thinking about all those things right now. I think that's fair to say. We have more questions than we have answers.
Right.
But we know to make that happen, very soon we're going to have to kick off a capital campaign.
Yeah.
We're going to have to try to raise that $400,000. But based on the math, that's what per household? What are we looking at? Like,
Yeah, so when we were just taking 400,000 over an 18-month campaign, it's about $225 a month per household. So
and if I'm correct in this, the eventual mortgage on that $2 million building, if we put that money down, is pretty much a level hit with our current budget, right?
correct, on rent, yeah, it's pretty much a wash.
So those are conversations we're having, guys. And I don't know if it scares you or what.
Well, but even before that, we may have to go to 3 services. You forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to not think about. No, the reality is,
Yeah.
at our current rate, within the 6 months or so, first 6 months of this year, we might grow to a place where a third service is mandatory.
Yeah.
And now we have to ask questions like this. Is it a third service on Sunday? Well,
Right.
I don't think we can do that because our agreement with Rec Outlet
Right.
wouldn't allow us to have a third service during that time.
Right.
Then is it a Saturday? Is it a Thursday? Is it a Wednesday? Do we have the volunteers to pull that off? Do we have the musicians to pull that off? All good problems to have, but
Yeah.
conversations that we're having, realistically, over the next 18 months to 2 years of our lease,
Yeah.
we're going to have to come up with a kind of a stopgap solution here
Yeah.
before we even get to that place.
Yeah,
So
while we're planning for the next step. the
What
building
great
step.
problems to
I
have.
know,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
it really is.
Yeah, I mean, we
Like-
talk a lot in here about the 80% rule, right?
Yeah.
Which says a church is too full when the average attendance exceeds 80% of our sanctuary seating. And so our sanctuary seating here, capacity is at 175. And so just a few stats I want to throw at you guys. You know, our second service in-person average with kids is averaging 120, and that's 88 without kids. And so we're at approximately 69% capacity with our kids today. And, you know, there's some anomalous numbers. Sundays too. We think about Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
Our Easter 2024 second service in-person numbers with kids was 294.
Yeah.
And 224 without kids. And then some other anomalies we think about, like baby dedication Sunday. There's always a lot of families who want to come in and join us for that. Baptism Sundays, especially if we're having multiple baptisms on a particular Sunday that we're planning for, you're going to see a lot of extra family members and friends come in to participate in that. And maybe VBS Sunday is another one where we have a little bit more. And so, thinking about that,
Christmas Eve
Christmas
was
Eve, we
huge.
couldn't
Christmas
fit
Eve,
here.
well, we have Christmas, but I often think about the times where we're grabbing some chairs in the back, and we're having to add that extra row back there, or 2 rows sometimes, or whatever, just in order to fit the number of people in here.
Yeah.
So
And by sheer numbers, by 2027, we should have about 350 in person.
Right.
That's 100% capacity if in both services.
That's right.
So this is not a 5-year plan. This is something we're thinking about right now, and know that this is immediate.
All incredible problems to have,
Yes.
but
Praise
still
God.
problems that this
Right.
team, and I'm super grateful for this team,
Yeah.
we have to navigate.
Yeah.
And so if you've got questions or thoughts about that, part of the conversations that we're going to be having about capital campaign is because of this, right?
Yeah.
It's also because in the last year we had more than 150 first-time visitors.
Woo!
Last year we had 170 first-time visitors. So in the last 2 years, 320 first-time visitors. If that continues, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And the life transformation happening in those people who are visiting is absolutely incredible. So thank you to all of you for making that happen. Well, guys, I think we could talk about the future a lot. I don't know if we have any more questions that we need to address online from that. Here's the deal. If you have questions, feel free to ask us. Each of the 6 of us are happy to have those conversations with you as we move forward. As we close today, I just want to share from your pastor's heart a challenge that I want to give to us as a church. Each year we kind of have a challenge of, what is it that God's calling us to focus in on? And as we've been praying about it, this year it's 1 word, 3 letters. It's one, O-N-E, one. Philippians chapter 2, verses 1 through 4 says, "Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete," Paul says, "by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others." You're going to be seeing and hearing that verse all year. In fact, my goal for our household, and maybe you make it for yours, is that's the memory verse for the year, so that each of our families begin to memorize and quote that on a regular basis. Because I want us to remember why we do what we do. We do it to bankrupt hell and populate heaven. We have one great big God who made a way, one way, by sending his son Jesus. He's now left the mission of the kingdom in the hands of his one church and has given us one command: love God, love each other, and one mission: go and make disciples. So to make that happen, we must be unified as a body of believers, body of Christ followers. We must stay focused on our mission. We must be sincere in our love. We must work together, bear with one another, support each other, be patient with one another. That's a big one for all of us. Hold each other accountable, encourage one another, pray for one another, and admonish one another in love. We're not called to be an isolated group of individuals. In fact, the church is not designed to function that way. Just look at the early church. Look at Acts chapter 2. They needed each other. They counted on one another. They couldn't do it without each other. And it was literally a matter of life and death. Paul compared the church to a body. Many unique parts coming together to function as a powerful whole. And we are called to community and relationship. And that brings responsibility for us. As followers of Jesus, we must commit to being present for one another, to resist the urge to disparage or gossip with one another, to regularly gather together to remind ourselves of our mission. We dive deep into God's word together. We pray with one another. We laugh with each other. We grieve and cry when others are hurting. We celebrate big life events with one another. We serve together. We give sacrificially, and we share our faith because we are doing life together as one. While that doesn't mean that the church is going to be the social calendar and that the church is going to be organizing a bunch of fun events all the time, what it means is we are going to be asking you to be intentional about sharing and taking ownership of the mission, the vision, the values of the church. We say this all the time. Your staff and even your awesome lay leaders cannot do all the work. We work hard, but we can't do it all. Nor can we be the only ones who care about the mission. We're talking about doing big stuff this year and in the years to come, which means over the next couple of years, each one of us are going to have to commit to giving our time and our talents and our treasures even more sacrificially for the kingdom. That doesn't mean equal giving. We all have different abilities and we all have different capacities. But it does mean equal commitment and sacrifice. Each one willing and committed to consistently doing their part. So, are you up for it? Are you ready for it? Will you commit to it? One in mission and purpose, one in heart and attitude, one in our calling, each one becoming the best one that they can be so that together with one mission we can reach the next one for Jesus. That's our challenge. One for this year. One. And I don't know what that's going to look like next year when we sit around this table, which I think we might do this again. Yeah. Sit around this table and celebrate what God has done. I can't even wait. Yep. You might be a part of that story. Or somebody you know that doesn't know this church and doesn't know Jesus might be a part of that story. And that's why we do what we do. Yes. That's why we talk about budgets. That's why we look at spreadsheets and numbers. That's why we have hard conversations. That's why we pray with one another and laugh together. We are doing this for the sake of the kingdom, and you're a huge part of that. We love you. We're so glad that you're a part of our church family, and we're so grateful we get to do this together. God bless you. If you have any more questions, let us know. And just so you know, this video will be available soon, the way that all of our sermons are on our website and online on our app. So if you want to watch this again within the next 48 hours, it'll be there for you. Guys, thanks for being a part of this discussion tonight.
Thank you.
We love you. Have a great night. We'll see you soon.